I have left a job before. It was a little scary to take that plunge and leave what was a very good opportunity for something a little bit more unknown. The deciding factor was I was kind of getting pigeonholed into a very specific set of skills. I didn't feel like I was opening more doors. I felt like they were closing in on me.
I think at the beginning of every job, you should have a why. Why are you doing this? Once that why changes to a point where you're not on fire for that, maybe it's an opportunity for you to really take that next step and think, okay, is this something that I want to continue to pursue?
Hopefully it doesn't get to this point, but for me, it's when I am miserable at my current job. But sometimes it's just a move to something better. I also have changed jobs. I could move to a new location to pursue more education.
I recently graduated from college. I really haven't had a reason to leave my job yet.
This takes a lot of time of discernment, of prayer and consideration before making a big decision. But we as humans should always be thinking about what are ways that we can grow better.
Welcome back to You, Me, and Ennui, the show where you, the listener, and me, your host, Mary Kate Polanin, discuss the challenges that come with life's uncertainty. And that's the Ennui. Hello and welcome to another episode of You, Me, and Ennui. Today we're going to be talking about finding your passion and how that applies to your work life. We're really excited to have another guest with us, Catherine Rains. For the past 30 years, Catherine Rains has created collages for the purpose of inspiring herself and others to awaken to who we are meant to be. However, until age 33, she didn't think she had an artistic bone in her body and had never taken an art class. Catherine's artistic calling started as she followed what made her feel the most alive and connected. Beginning as a hobby, collage quickly evolved into her greatest joy and eventually her life's calling. After spending most of her adult life as a corporate trainer, she realized her dream of creating art full-time in 2018, which has now evolved into teaching artists around the world to create collages that inspire and speak truth to the world. Welcome, Catherine. It's so good to have you.
Thank you, Mary Kate. I appreciate that.
The topic of work and finding your passion and where those two overlap or maybe where they don't is something that really interests us. So we're really excited to have you here to speak to us about it. But first, could you take a step back and tell us a little bit, beyond the bio that I just read, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
Yeah, it's been quite a windy road. When I started off getting out of college, I had no idea. In fact, I had no inkling that I would ever end up as a full-time artist actually making an income this way. I always thought I'd have a corporate job or I'd be running a career center for a university. Those are my two ambitions. And they were good ambitions, and I had prepared my entire life for them. I had gotten a master's for this, and I had moved physically to get different jobs to move up the ladder. But the higher I got, the more I realized there wasn't a fit, even though I was talented at it, so I was getting rewarded for good work, but I wasn't thriving. I was stressed all the time, wondering how I was going to basically motivate people to be the best they can be, which is kind of in my MO. I always want to support and motivate people to kind of step into who they are meant to be, but I wasn't doing it myself. I was following what was logical to do. I had done all the career tests. I was a career counselor myself, so I knew how to find a path. And on paper, it looked like I had it. But in my soul, in my heart, it didn't match, what gave me joy. And so really the turning point was when I was kind of at my wit's end. I was so stressed. I had no idea how I was going to, what was my next step, because I had prepared my entire life for this one thing. And at the time, that one thing was to be a major career development director at a large university. They're great jobs. They're lifetime contracts. You get great everything. And I didn't, what else was I going to do? I had prepared my whole life for that. And I was in it, I was embedded into it. So it all kind of started when I said, okay, you don't like your job and you can't go anywhere else because I have no idea where to go. So I did career development on myself, and a classic career development exercise that I've done for years is write a list of everything you love to do as a child. but weren't told to do it. So I made this outrageously long list when I was 33, and it had things like kick the can, and I loved to play Barbies, and I loved to make forts and teach my sister's school. And in the middle of this long list was the word collage. And I had never done art. I had never drawn anything, painted anything. I considered myself an artistic nerd. But I had a memory of myself as a 10-year-old where I made one collage. And my parents took pictures of me holding my collage. In fact, it's on my studio wall right here because it's like the picture that changed my life. And I said, you know what? Who can't tear up paper? I mean, I can tear up paper like anybody else. So one Sunday, I got all my catalogs from the house. I tore them all up and made a collage. They were horrible, but I didn't know that. I thought it was the best. And it was at the time, it was the best I knew how to make. But the point is that my heart exploded. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is how I want to feel. And so it started off as stress relief. I just followed the cues. And I really have done that from that day forward. It took a very, very long time from age 33, I am now 64, to actually finding a way to keep that alive, keep that, oh my God, I love this. But it's following little tiny cues all the way along, like what gives you joy. And I believe many times it happens by following the day-to-day things that just give you joy. Like I like tearing up paper and making very juvenile looking things. By the way, people thought I had children. They were so juvenile, which
Oh no.
which didn't bother me a hoot. I don't know why it didn't bother me. Because to me, each one of these collages were my soul. And I loved them like they were children. And so I wasn't insulted a bit, but it took a long time. And that was perfectly fine. That was my path. That's the path I needed to take. Eventually moved on from being a university career director to becoming a corporate trainer for the Myers-Briggs company, the MBTI. And I did that for most of my adult life. And I loved it. But I always knew in the back of my brain that this wasn't it. Even though I actually loved my job, when I got into corporate training, I was fulfilling what I considered my purpose, which is to support people in finding their life's passion. But it was just the way I was doing it, and I needed to do that for as long as I needed to do it. But ironically, doing that actually prepared me for this, which is now I train people all over the world, but I train them to find their art voice. Nothing is better than that for me right now.
I love that. Yeah, I love, reflecting back what you just said about how even though there was some sense that you had deep down that the path that you were taking in career counseling wasn't quote unquote right for you, there were still elements that like prepared you for the next step. Very providential. So, and I love the process that you took for yourself on reflecting back on when you felt the happiest or the most like yourself. Would you say that this is a good practical approach that other people can take to find their passion?
It's the path that I took, and then I've helped thousands of people at this point do the exact same thing. And it's trusting that you already do know where to go, but you don't know the end destination. Like I didn't, although I had this little dream in my head, like when I made my first collage, I went, wouldn't it be cool to have a career like this?
Yeah.
But it took another 20 years before that manifested. But I was doing it all along. I was always doing art. So the answer to your question is by following the little cues that we already know, like the little thing that when you say to yourself, God, wouldn't that be cool? To me, that is the path. But some people get discouraged because they don't see how they're going to get there. Like they want to jump to that. I would have loved to have jumped to that. I would have loved to have gone straight to full-time art when I was 33. But that wasn't my path. There were so many skills I needed to learn by taking, a corporate job and following day by day. Okay, now what feels good? Oh, okay, now what feels good? Oh, okay, now what feels good? Constantly readjusting. And for me, it was also it was a matter of I never knew I was going to get there, to it. And I had to be happy wherever I was. So even when there were, I was traveling every single week on the road, 5 days a week. And even when that was stressful physically, I had to keep saying, but this is where I'm meant to be now. And I'm not going to fight this. I'm not going to try to get out of this. Instead, I'm going to fully be in this, because to me, being fully in where you are it gets you where you want to go. It's when you fight it, that's when you get stuck basically, and you don't see a way out, because there is not a way out. The way out sounds corny, but the way out is in. It's fully in, even though you could be unhappy.
That's so interesting. That like is really resonating with me in a way that I hadn't expected. I've had many conversations with like friends and family members. I've changed jobs and careers really a few times, and there's always been this feeling that I've had as well. What you said about you have to choose to be happy wherever you are for right now. And so, some of my friends would say, well, I used to work in a corporate job. I worked in corporate marketing and advertising before that, and now I work in the nonprofit world where I get to talk about spirituality and what that means to young people. But I didn't know how I was going to get there. But yes, originally when I was in my corporate secular role, I would have friends say, well, like, why don't you just make a change like right now? And I'm like, I don't know what it is yet. So I just have to focus on doing what I'm doing right now and where I am really well. So that's really interesting to hear that reflected from someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting when I first kind of came to where this realization, it actually was in my young 30s when I was in the university job. And at that point, I had spent 6.5 years. So I'd already found my art. Now I was 6.5 years into this job. And I have to tell you, for 6.5 years, I was miserable. No one knew it, but because I was projecting competence, and I'm a very positive person. So people saw me that way. But underneath it was like, God, what am I doing here? I hate managing people. I hate being yelled at all the time, because that's what was happening. It was I was serving lots of audiences. But at the 6.5 year mark, something dawned on me from a spiritual perspective, because I believe in the concept of what you resist persists. I believe it strongly. And so I was miserable this one day, and this voice came into my head that says, what you resist persists. You are going to stay here the rest of your life if you keep fighting where you are. So instead of like, that lizard brain you have that goes, I don't want to be here. What are we doing here? I don't want to get out of here. So, my brain was like this for 6.5 years. And finally, I just like, in a moment, I went, oh, I'm resisting it. Even though it was logical, 100% logical to resist. But as soon as I realized that's what I was doing, all of a sudden, every time somebody came at me, and wanted me to solve a big problem, or they were taking up my time and I didn't have time for them. My boss wanted my energy and I didn't want to give him my energy. I went, oh, I'm supposed to be here. And when I realized, oh, this is it, I'm supposed to serve here, because there really wasn't a path out. I live in a small southern town. That's where the university was. There were no other jobs, unless I was going to, completely uproot everything, which I wasn't prepared to do at the time. But as soon as I started doing that and stopped fighting where I was, I swear to God, the entire universe opened up. And within 3 months, that's when the Myers-Briggs company called me and offered me pretty much the dream job. And I moved, and it was the perfect job. Even though I would have loved to have been an artist right then and there, it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And this has happened multiple times in my life. Every time I fight, I fight. No, I don't want to be here. This is not the right. And it can be anything. I've gone through cancer. I've gone through divorce, major upheavals in my life, all things that you're not supposed to like. What the hell? I don't want to be doing, I don't want to get a divorce. This is not my idea. But when I didn't fight it, it was like, oh, yeah, I didn't like say, yeah, bring it on. But I realized, okay, that's what's happening now. Okay, so I'm just going to be there as opposed to fight there. And then over and over again, I got more than I wanted. I was guided to the right place without efforting, without looking.
I love this posture that you're taking of, just being realistic and pragmatic, but not in like a cut and dry way, but almost like, well, this is what it is. This is the reality of the situation. And being more open to that, it sounds like it's really for you opened up possibilities for more, or for at least to be able to move forward instead of, like you said, being stuck in denial of what's going on. So that's really interesting. And there are a couple of things that you touched on that I wanted to follow up on. The one is when you talked about you wanted to pursue art, but you couldn't even imagine how you would be able to make money doing that. What insights did you gain from that experience? For maybe there's someone who can't change their job or doesn't have the resources to study for the field that they're interested in, especially if it is something going from more traditional to more creative, but just in general, what insights do you have for that sort of experience?
Well, I mean, I've been there in that exact spot, many times where there wasn't a path, there wasn't a means. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I stayed in a corporate job a long time. Financially, I needed to do that. Stepping off a cliff and becoming a full-time artist financially, it's a little risky, especially when you're in your 40s, and at the time I wasn't married, no health insurance. So, it wasn't practical from a real life perspective to go. So my so-called, I don't know if it's advice as much as my experience is continue to, while you are where you are, how can you bring small parts of it into your life? And I'll give you an example. This might seem extreme, but I had been on the road with my corporate job, literally on the road for 10 years at one point. And I always had wanted to do my art. I mean, it was always in the back of my head, I want to do this, but I wasn't ready to leave. It just wasn't practical to leave this job, but I always wanted to go to art. So this was actually not that long ago. It was 2015, been on the road for 10 years. And at the 10-year mark, I said, okay, you got to have art, but I don't want to give up what I have, or it's not the time. I knew it wasn't the time. I don't know why I knew it. It's not like I was poor or anything. I could have financially probably swung it, but it just didn't feel right. There was something in me that said it's not right. So what I did in 2015, it was New Year's Day, actually, I made a plan to bring art in my life in some way because I was traveling. It's very hard to do the art that I do. I'm a collage artist, which involves a lot of supplies to do it on the road. But I said, you know what? I'm going to stop making my job an excuse on why I'm not doing what I want to do. So I made this plan that I would do art every day, and I made it physical. Like I had a schedule of how it was physically going to happen, so I wouldn't make an excuse. So here's the plan. Every day I get up at 5 a.m., 7 days a week. Well, so there's two scenarios. So if I was home, I was up by 5, in my studio by 6:30, which mean I was dressed, ready to go for the day by 6:30 a.m. And I'm sitting exactly where I sat back then in my studio. I would do art for 3 or 4 hours, and then I would then go to my work, which is in the same place. But then I would work the rest of the day till 7 or 8 at night. When I was on the road, which was over 50% of the time, I carried 2 50-pound suitcases with me. And one of those 50-pound suitcases was basically an art studio in a suitcase. So I had paint, paper, easels, anything I could fit into that suitcase, I took. And when I was on the road, my goal was to be fed and done my day by 7:30 or 7. And then I set up an art studio in any hotel room, doesn't matter what the size. And I would do art until 11 or 12 every night. And I did that for 3 years. And that was until 2018. And by the way, my story isn't unique. It's just that, the question is, how can you bring a little bit of it in? How can you do 10 minutes a day? How can you devote like 1 hour a day to do, and it doesn't have to be, you don't even have to know what it is. Like, I knew that art was mine, but some people, I know a lot of people, they don't know what their passion is. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. You don't need to know. You just do something that just lights you up. And it may take, for some people, they may have never even thought about that. It's like, what does light you up? So you go for the little stuff, the low-hanging fruit. Do you like to read a book? Do you like to cook? Do you like to garden? Because I think the cues for where we're meant to serve and who we are is all over the place. But we look for the big one. For me, mine looks big, but it wasn't for decades. It was this inkling thing that wouldn't it be cool if everybody has one of those.
Yeah, we're all, I think the tendency, as you put it, we're all looking for that aha moment or this big declaration of like, and now I will go do this because I am fully prepared to go and do it. But I wanted to ask that schedule that you just shared is it's really dedicated. What made you stick with it? Was it those small promptings of what makes you feel fully alive? Like what do you attribute to your discipline, your dedication to sticking with it, even when art wasn't your full-time job?
I guess the answer to that is what motivated me to make the schedule in the first place. So I had been on the road solid for 10 years. And at the 10-year mark, I realized I'm not doing my passion. I'm not doing the thing that I love the most. I really was barely doing it. Maybe once a week, I would do maybe, I don't know, a half hour. If I'm lucky, I would do that much. And so really it was like a breaking point. It was like shit, should I get off the pot? Like stop saying you want to do this. And that's why for me, I had to put structure behind it. I couldn't just say, oh, I'm going to do an hour of art a day, or I'm going to do this every day. Unless I embedded it into a schedule, it was never going to happen because I'd not been doing it for 10 years. So it was more that I finally wanted to step into what I love the most, even if I never make a dime off of it. And so, by the way, by doing it every day, it actually changed everything. It gets momentum going. If you can do it 10 days, you can do it 20 days, you can do it 30, 60 days. I actually counted how many days in a row I did it. I miss a day.
What was your longest streak, days in a row? Do you remember?
Probably, well, eventually what had happened was it was too much pressure to say I had to do it every single day. Instead, I said, I want to do an average of 1 hour a day. So that meant that some days I got to do 4 hours. Other days I did 0 hours. But I actually recorded it in a calendar, how many hours I did each day. And at the end of the year, I didn't have 365 hours. I had like 825 hours. It was an outrage. It was a game. And that's another, kind of thing to turn it into. It's like, how far can you take it? And I made a ton of art. I also sold a lot of art, while I was on the road. So, but then that helped me quit my job because I had made so much art. I had actually created momentum over 3 years that at the end of the 3 years, and by the way, I had been saving my money like a crazy person. I always knew, what I wanted, or I shouldn't say I didn't always know, but I knew what the end goal was. And in order to feel safe quitting, I needed a nest egg. So I'm a very, what's the word? I'm a very minimalist person in terms of my lifestyle. I drove a 15-year-old car until like last year because my goal is not to have a nice car. My goal is to do art every day. So,
right. It's in service to the larger goal. Yeah.
I've always done that. Live way beyond my means, way under my means. so that I could find what I really wanted in my life. And I still do that, but
you're speaking my language when it comes to like, if it's not on the calendar, it's not happening. And like, I'm also like a very tangible goals person. Like there's a whiteboard on my refrigerator with like my daily to-do list. Like you're definitely speaking my language. And I love what you're sharing about like gamifying. And it sounds like you have this really strong sense of yourself. Would you say that is something that's important? Say someone's listening to this podcast right now and they hear your story and they think, okay, maybe that's what I need to be doing, but maybe is there a better way of them being able to take a step back and understand their personality type and how that can apply to help them reach their goals?
So I don't want my story to intimidate someone else. To think that one, you have to know what you want to do the rest of your life and you have to make this big plan and this big schedule. Because in my experience, a lot of people don't know that. They don't know this big thing. They would like to have it. They would like to have a purpose, or they want to know what it is they're supposed to do in their life. I think it's intimidating not knowing. So instead, what I tell people is follow the voice inside that says, wouldn't it be cool if? And then what teeny little thing can you do? Even if it means I have an artist friend who's really into reading books. In fact, she wouldn't classify herself as an artist. She's a web designer. But what she really wants to do is what I'm doing. But what she's doing is following what really excites her. So she does make time every day for a little bit of art. She also is a single mom, so she doesn't have a lot of time. But what one of her passions is to read books. Like, oh my gosh, she reads like 20 to 30 novels a year, which by the way, if I get one in a year, I think I'm doing really good. But that is her passion. And to me, following whatever it is that gets you excited, even if it has nothing to do with the end, which you think would be really cool, I think you kind of like you train your brain or you train your soul, and you're telling your soul, okay, I am willing to listen. It's like learning listening. You're willing to listen and follow the cues, even if those cues mean gardening, and gardening have nothing to do with anything that you think you might want to do with your life. Because somehow, by following day to day, moment to moment, what gets you excited, that builds a skill inside of you that says, oh, I can follow. I can hear the voice. I can hear the higher power, even if it means I'm going to go read a book or take a nap, take a walk. All of those things to me are part of our purpose, step by step.
It's really interesting to me that like we've had other conversations with other guests about like finding your career and taking a practical step, but it's interesting how for me, I'm sensing a theme in the conversations of it's never this, like I mentioned before, like this sweeping aha moment. It is in these simple steps of checking in with yourself and, sensing and feeling and understanding what is right for you. And I'm laughing because I can only imagine how frustrating an answer that must be to a young person who might just say, well, like, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. And I don't know if maybe you've had those kind of conversations in your career counseling.
Absolutely. Well, I used to counsel 18 to 22-year-olds, so that was the beginning of my career, really. And so, yes, and even 40-year-olds want to be told that. 50-year-olds, like, just tell me what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. And I think that's why I say we make it really big. Like, someone might look at me and go, oh, well, she knows what she wants to do. She's always known what she wants to do. But I never had a path to getting there. The path, I mean, a clear path. I didn't know how you're supposed to do this. Let me just tell you. So when I was in college, I was a career development nerd. So I hung out in the career development office because I don't know, I was just fascinated with career tests and there were so many careers you could choose from. I was just like mesmerized by the number of choices. So I actually followed the so-called right steps to finding a career. So I did all the career tests. I did all the informational interviews. I did internships. I did 7 of them in college. So I did all the right things. And it didn't lead me to the right place. And I eventually became a career counselor because I'm really good at helping people get jobs. But I really don't believe in that system. The system I know works that helps people get to their highest good place is exactly what I just said. And that is doing what gives you joy in every moment. Like when I did my first collage when I was 33, that was who knew that was going to lead to anything? And I'm telling you, it was the worst looking thing you could possibly imagine. It looked like a 2-year-old or maybe a 5-year-old had made this thing, but it gave me joy. What gives someone joy? Like, is it a book? Is it taking a nap? Is it walking with a friend? Is it whatever it is? Because again, it's developing the skill and following that skill. The skill is what makes you happy. Can you follow that? Because to me, moment to moment, that's what leads you to the real place, not taking career tests. Although I'm a big proponent of career tests but they don't provide the answer. They provide cues. It's like, oh, that might be cool. So maybe I should go volunteer there but it's not, I don't think a test or a career counselor even, a career counselor can help you hear yourself. But my guess is that most people have something in them that says, wouldn't it be cool if? And then what teeny little baby thing can you do to explore that? And at the same time, moment to moment, do something that just gives you joy.
I'm really struck by this balance that you seem to strike between, listening to looking inward and following those moments that give you inner joy. And yet at the same time, you have this very pragmatic approach to when things don't go your way and you say, I'm meant to be here. And, you know, when I look at your career trajectory, you've made several transitions. And I'm just curious, as you went from your college job to working at MBTI to art, back to MBTI, you know, what went through your mind? At any point, did you feel like you were following your passion with each step, or maybe were you setting it aside for a practical reason?
That's a really good question. By the way, that's a really deep
I
question.
try.
That was good. It's really a combination of both. You know, I have this thing in my head that says, I mean, I'm a very spiritual person. And from my mid-20s, I was always kind of giving my life up. Like, just God, tell me where to go. I don't know. Because trying to figure it out logically just never worked, even though I had done it the so-called right way. Trusting that wherever I am is where I'm meant to be, or I wouldn't be there, has been kind of my life philosophy, really. And it is what has gotten me to this place. I'm not answering your question exactly. So
No. But I do like what you're saying about that through these transitions, you feel, or you feel the presence of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a loving creator with some sort of plan in mind for you. So I love that.
I've
But as
always done this. I've
yeah,
always done this thing. Like when I find myself in a place where I don't want to be, I say to myself, God, universe, higher being, whatever you are up there, out there, just make it damn obvious. And I prefer not to have like a major catastrophe happen, like a car wreck. Make it damn obvious in a gentle way of what my next step is. And I have said this thousands of times to the universe. So when I was traveling across the US for it was 12 years, pretty much every day, every morning I would say, yes, God, I really want to be an artist. And I'm going to stay here until you make it damn obvious I'm supposed to move. Same thing happened with a kind of shaky marriage. I've been in a marriage for 31 years. I thought it was happy, but it was not totally, like there was something wrong with it. And so I just kept saying to the universe, okay, if I'm supposed to be here, make it damn obvious, and I'm not. Just don't make it little obvious. I'm not going to make the decision. I want you to absolutely put it in my face. And boy, did it get put in my face. And this has happened repeatedly. Like, I don't need to make a decision. And so you may think I'm practical, but the practical part is I know that my logical mind is not near as smart as whatever is guiding me. So if I can just allow myself to follow where I'm supposed to be, and where I'm supposed to be is where I am, or I wouldn't be there. So right now I'm supposed to be here. By the way, I'm doing that now. So I have a pretty thriving art practice. I teach people all over the world, but this isn't the end. I see myself just beginning, even though I've been doing this for a long time. So I keep saying, God, make the next. And by the way, the word God is kind of like ubiquitous. It's universe, higher power. I don't know what this is, but just what's the next step? Like, tell me, like, make it so obvious that, of course, you're going to do that because it's in your face. Until then, I will do what's in front of me.
I love that. I mean, and I'd love to know more about how your role in career counseling has influenced in what you do now with your art. Can you say a little bit more about the process of helping people find their artistic voices and what you do now?
Well, it's all the same thing, from the time I was a true career counselor to what I'm doing now. And it's all about the same thing. It's following the cues of what lights you up as you're making something. Because with art, just like finding a career, because art is a career, but a lot of people aren't going to be pursuing art to make money. They're doing it because it's a hobby. They love it. That doesn't really matter to me why you're doing it. You're doing it because it gives you joy. Or I'm hoping you're not going to do it. So I teach collage. So collage, is my art form. And there's a zillion ways to do collage, just like there's a zillion ways to do any kind of art. And so when I'm teaching art, I'm trying to get people to learn to listen of, okay, I like this, I don't like that. Now, just because I do it this way, me as the artist, as a teacher, doesn't mean you should be doing it that way. It's just what lights me up. So I'm trying to help people hear like
Well,
what gets them excited. Like when you touch that piece of paper, I'm a collage artist, so I have paper. Do you like this one? You like this one? Okay, if you like this one, that's the one you're supposed to use. Just because I like this one, it's not yours. So it's training the inner voice, and it's the same thing as finding a career. I mean,
yeah.
it's the exact same skill. It's how do you listen to yourself and hone that voice that says, yeah, I like that. Oh, don't like that. And you keep following it.
I love that. It sounds a lot like a process I'm familiar with of discernment, especially
Yeah,
like,
exactly. That's
yeah,
exactly it.
I
Yeah,
love that.
that's another way of saying it is learning how to have that because it's a skill. And a lot of people don't listen to themselves. I didn't listen to myself forever. That's how I got myself in a corporate job in the first place. Well, I should say my university job. I got there because it was logical. I'm good at
Right.
it. I'm a good counselor. I know how to get jobs. It's logical. But it really didn't light me up.
Well, thank you. I've loved hearing every part of your story, and I really appreciate you just being so open with where you've been and what's been the guiding force for you. And I hope our listeners, walk away with a little bit of inspiration or maybe at least some encouragement to follow what brings them joy. And I want to ask you a question that we ask all of our guests at this point. The name of the show is You, Me, and Ennui. And so I just always ask our guests, is there anything giving you a sense or feeling of ennui at the moment?
So just, I love that question because it's not something that I ponder that much, but it's something I think is really powerful. Like what is out of alignment, basically? It's funny because just the kind of person I am, and I sense you might be like this too, Mary Kate, is I like to say yes to every good idea that comes in. So it's kind of comes down to discernment. Like what gives me kind of stress or unease is having so many options and I want to do them all. But I know that that isn't my path. Doing them all is crazy making. So it's what gives me unease is how do I take like five really good choices? They're all good. How do I
Yeah.
discern between them and focus on the top two or three? And that's a real issue because the more successful you get, the more of these come in.
Hmm.
And it sounds like it shouldn't be a problem, but it's like I have a hard time not saying yes to everything.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I definitely, from a social calendar perspective, especially learning to say no has been a real skill to build. I'm also planning a wedding, so I'm planning from many wonderful options, but you're
I know, it's
agonizing
all good,
over,
right? It's
you're
all
like,
good.
I keep saying it's like choosing your favorite, like which flavor of ice cream would you like? They're all going to be great, but like somehow you get caught up in this stress of what if I pick the wrong one? It's just ice cream.
I
It's a.
that's a great analogy, but it
Yeah.
is hard. And like a wedding. By the way, congratulations.
Oh,
What
thank you.
such a thrill. But creating this, and that's creating artwork. You're creating this
Yeah.
beautiful experience for yourself, for your future, for your partner, and you make it so big. Like if I make the wrong decision, but it's not the wrong, you can't make a wrong decision.
No, you can't.
But it's very hard to build. It's very hard to know. Do you like vanilla or chocolate better? Because you like them both. So
Yeah.
so, but you can only have one. Like, how do you do that? I feel the same way. So I had an offer from a stencil company. It's actually an art supply company. Offered me to create a stencil line. Who wouldn't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And I am,
Incredible.
but whenever I find myself struggling inside, like, oh, I want to do it, I want to do it, but I'm not doing it. Okay, what does that tell you? It's
Mm.
like what you're not like running toward versus
Yes.
I'm also teaching in Italy. I'm running toward Italy. Like,
Right.
it's like what really literally what lights you up as opposed to what sounds like a good idea.
Love
So,
that. Well,
congratulations. That is
oh,
so exciting.
thank
Like that,
you.
like
Thank you.
that is one of the two happiest times in my life. Hopefully it's a time for you.
I will start thinking of it as an art project. I love that. That's a good, as I
planning
take
a
it to
wedding.
the finish line.
Planning a wedding is 100% a piece of art. No doubt about that one.
I love it. Well, we're about to wrap up the conversation, but is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners? Where can people learn more about you or the work that you're doing? Do you have any projects coming up that you'd like to talk about? Maybe not the stenciling project, but anything else?
Oh, I hope the person's not listening.
That's okay.
we won't send this to her. And I still might do the stencils. We don't know. Well, I mean, part of my life's mission is to inspire people to find their own artistic thing, whether it's gardening or, collage. And I actually have a free class that I offer people that helps them kind of dip their toe into collage, because one of the things about collage is that a lot of people like me who thought they had no artistic ability whatsoever, collage is accessible to people. It's like, yeah, you can do collage. You may not be able to paint or draw. You can do collage. So I make it accessible. So I offer a free 5-day class to help people jump in. And see.
Where can people find that?
It is collageworkshops.com/start. And so I'll give you the link, but it's just a fun way to start and see if there's anything there, even if it's a hobby. I mean, I shouldn't say even if. Doing it as a hobby is phenomenal, and if it turns into anything else, that's phenomenal too. But most people don't. Most people will have a hobby, like knit, they crochet, they garden, whatever it is, or they collage, So that's the best
normalize hobbies. I love it.
That's the best way to connect with me.
Great. Well, we'll be sure to link to that project as well as other ways to get in touch and follow you, Catherine. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation, and I hope it maybe lit the flame or give a little nudge for someone listening to find their passion.
Well, I am very honored to be part of what your mission is. So thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks again for listening to You, Me, and Ennui. As always, I hope the conversation today offered a bit of insight into whatever you're facing and lets you know that there are at least one or two more people here in podcast land who can relate, because that's what we're trying to do, build a community. Want a way to go deeper on today's topic? Be sure to listen to our companion bonus meditation with questions to help you reflect on how this topic might apply to your life. If you enjoy this podcast, be sure to like, review, and subscribe. You can also join the conversation at our Discord server, linked in the show notes. I'm your host, Mary Kate Polanin, and the one thing that's for certain is that I'll be with you next time on You, Me, and Ennui.